guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be reviewing my most recent book of the month pick, Hereafter by Amy Lynn. So let's get into my review. So this was the book of the month memoir selection for the month of March, and I decided to get this one to step a little outside of my comfort zone. The only memoirs I ever really read are celebrity memoirs, and the topic of this book sounded really interesting, so I wanted to give it a shot. It is a debut novel, and that idea really excited me, that I'd get to read a memoir of someone who is telling their story for the first time. So Hereafter is a memoir written in almost free verse. Every chapter is only a page or so long, and it is Amy Lynn telling her story of grief after her husband passes away unexpectedly. The entire thing is written in free verse, so each chapter is only about a page or so long. It's not really told like a poem, but I call it free verse just because she does mess with the standard conventions of English writing and literature just a tad. I was actually really surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. I actually gave it 5 out of 5 stars. In part because I finished this entire book in 2 hours. I don't remember the last time that I have finished a book in one sitting. I don't remember the last time I finished a book in one sitting, so I feel like that alone meant that it deserved the 5 out of 5 rating. The way she writes is super engaging. I think that in part it was because the chapters were so short. As I mentioned, every chapter is in free verse. It's only a page or so long, so while there are probably 70 or 80 so chapters, they're easy to flip through, easy to engage with. It's one of those books that when you're reading, you're like, oh, well, I'll just read to the next chapter. Like, I could do that. And then because they're so short, you just don't stop. Like, there's not a good stopping point, I felt, just because it was like, I'll just read one more. I'll just read one more. And eventually I was 3/4 of the way through the book, so I was like, well, I might as well finish it now. This book does jump between the past and the present about every other chapter, so you learn about her relationship with her husband Curtis and how she met him, and some of their relationship struggles up until his death. And then it also intertwines with the present, where she's telling the story about the day he died and her life following. I really appreciated how brutally honest she was throughout this story. This book helped me realize that I had a lot of misconceptions about grief, which I didn't realize I have. She speaks very honestly about how everyone thinks that you're supposed to be on this specific timeline in your grief journey. She talks, I know one time, about how it seems like all of these young widows seem to get married within a year or so after their spouse's death. And she's very clear that that is not her story, that she doesn't understand how people are able to do that because she feels so stuck in her loss, if you will. So I learned a lot of things about, like, people say the first year's hard, the second year's hard, like very specific moments. From the 6-month anniversary of their death until the 1-year anniversary of their death, she writes is apparently very hard. And so, like, there were just little, like, factual things that I found were very interesting outside of her story. I also really love the language that she uses in this. She writes very beautifully and very honestly. I really appreciate that she's able to combine both this brutally honest descriptions of her life, but also in a way that's very beautiful. It's very easy to feel what she's feeling in the way that she's writing. It's super easy to connect with her and just feel the heaviness that she's experiencing and just feeling that she cannot move on, and hearing about how she might feel that way, but at the end of the day, like, the days keep on coming. I think this book is a great introduction for someone like me who is trying to get into memoirs, is read celebrity memoirs, wants to read regular people memoirs, and doesn't really know where to start. I think that Book of the Month really helped me find a good starting point in the memoir genre. I think this book is unique in the fact that I think I would recommend it to someone who really loves memoirs or someone who is new to the genre of memoirs. I think the way she writes is super compelling. Like I said, it's really fast-paced for not having really a driving line. Again, I'm more of a horror and a thriller reader, so for me, I always want the question answered, like, what happened that night? Who killed them? What's going on? And this book just isn't like that. There's no through line. The through line, what's pushing you to read, is because you want to learn more about her story. And the way that she writes, it's so easy to connect with her and hear what she's saying that you want to know her story. You want to keep reading because that's your driving factor, that you feel and connect and engage with her so deeply that you want to know what's going on in her life and how she is doing, and hear and read the story that she has to tell. I have been very selective with my 5 stars as of late. My 5-star rating, I try to think about like one of the best books ever. The only reason I probably wouldn't recommend it to absolutely everyone is just because it is on a heavier topic and not everyone might be ready or prepared for that. But you do know what you're getting into as soon as you read the front cover. So in that regard, I think this is a great read for anyone to be able to pick up. Fast-paced, easy to read, compelling, not hard to follow. Like this deserves to be my 5 out of 5. As I mentioned earlier, this is also a Book of the Month subscription, and I do just want to talk about some of my thoughts on Book of the Month. For about 18, 19 bucks a month, you get to choose from a curated list of books from a variety of different genres. All of these books are hardcover and curated by their staff. Not only can you choose from hardback books, but you can also choose from audiobooks, which I know will excite my audiobook girlies. They've been a company kind of intermittently since 1928 or so obviously they must be doing something right if for the last 100 or so years, people have been enjoying their service and are still paying for it to this day. So the reason I got Book of the Month in the first place is because in January, I really wanted to read The Fury, and my friend was already a Book of the Month subscriber, and that was her pick for the month of January. And I was really impressed that Book of the Month had these new releases that were highly sought after. The Fury at that time when I wanted to read it had a wait list of like 30 something weeks on Libby, and I couldn't even get it at my library or any other of the joined libraries in my library system. So I was really impressed that Book of the Month had that ability and that they weren't just picking like lesser known stories that like nobody wanted to read, kind of like underground indie stuff. I liked that they had some popular options, and it was a good way for me to get that new release that was really hard to kind of get on my own. In February, I chose The Resort. I haven't actually read this one yet. I am going to a resort in July, so I'm kind of maybe saving that one to read there because how cool would that be? This was Book of the Month's, I believe, thriller or horror, I'm not sure which one, pick. I thought it sounded interesting. I've never heard of a horror thriller taking place at like a vacation resort like this. I'm also trying to read around the world this year, and this book takes place in Thailand, so I figured that I could double dip a little bit. I'd get to read a new release while also getting to fulfill my around the world challenge. This was also the book that I got with my like new subscriber credit, so this one only ended up costing me $5 if I remember correctly, which for a new release hardcover is pretty incredible. My March pick, as I talked about, was Hereafter by Amy Lynn. Obviously, I really loved this one, and I felt that Book of the Month gave me a safe way to explore a genre that I'm not really familiar with. For me, this was a safe way to explore a new genre because I know that Book of the Month isn't going to choose a bad book. Again, in January, they picked a book that I really was desperate to read, and so I know that they're not gonna pick something that doesn't either have mass appeal or that isn't good in some form. So it felt like I could take a little risk here. It felt like a very calculated risk, rather than me just walking into a bookstore, going to the memoir section and picking through a bunch to find what fits. Plus, this ended up being a 5-star read, so obviously I felt that it was worth it. Now come to April, I actually just decided to skip my box this month. Looking through the Book of the Month choices for April, there wasn't really any that stood out to me. As I mentioned, my big genre is kind of horror thriller, and the thriller book this month wasn't exciting me. I don't think it was anything in particular about it, but I am kind of in the midst of a reading slump, so it's not necessarily about the book or their selections this month. It very much just could be about me. I'm really not trying to buy stuff that I don't need and that I don't want to have in my home, right? All the books on my bookshelf, by the end of this year, I will have read, and that's important to me, that I'm having books that I enjoy and that I've read, to be able to be in my home and display. And that's kind of how I think about everything I buy. And so I didn't want to waste, if you will, that $18 on a book that I might not read because I'm not excited about it. And then I don't want it to sit on my shelf and kind of take up pointless space. So the nice thing about Book of the Month though is that I don't lose those credits. I'm still able to use them in the future. I just banked the credit. So if in the future there's ever 2 books that I want to choose, I can now do that. One for that month's pick and then also kind of using that old credit to pay for it. So the price. My first month, I believe, only cost $5 because I was on kind of like a new subscriber rate. That first month was incredibly worth it, right? For $5, I'm getting a new hardcover, new release. That first month, that $5, it is incredibly worth it to get a new release hardcover sent straight to your door. Since then, I still think that the 19 or so bucks you pay is worth it. Because again, you're getting a new release, you know what you're getting is going to be worth it in some regard, and it's a hardcover. I don't know, like most hardcovers nowadays are nearly $30. So you are saving money getting books and new hardcovers this way, which I really appreciated. So I've only done it for 3 months, so I don't feel like I can make a definitive claim as to whether or not I think this is a good book subscription box that you should keep getting and you should all invest in. But these are kind of my thoughts 3 months in. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I'm definitely going to keep subscribing and kind of see what I get, but it's a little minor red flag to me that in the first 3 months that I've had it, I've already had to skip a month. So we'll see how that goes. If I end up skipping more months than I want to, that's going to be an automatic cancellation for me. I'm definitely just interested to see how my thoughts on Book of the Month are going to change over the course of the next few months or even the next year. So far, I like it. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what genres you are wanting to read more of in 2024. And I'll see you guys in the next video.